Can I have a function instead of another function? We can. That is referred as the nested function, which is a function is present inside of another function. So in this video, I will be clearly explaining about nested function. So watch the video till the end so that you can able to understand clearly about nested functions and use effectively these nested functions. So let us go ahead and discuss about nested functions. So nested functions, we can define any number of functions inside of another function, or we can define functions in a hierarchical manner. So in this video, we will be understanding nested function, which is one function inside of another function. So for that, I will take an example to explain how this nested functions works. So first, what I will be doing is that I will take this outer. Outer is one of the function I am defining. So instead of this outer function, what I will be doing is that I will just print a statement which is referring as outer function here. So we are having a function which is outer function, and inside of this outer function, I am having a outer function which is nothing but a print statement, right? So after that, I will define one more function here, which I will be defining as inner. So this is a inner function, right? In this function, in this outer function, I am having a inner function. So in this inner function, I will be printing one statement which is nothing but inner function. So why I'm doing this is because to understand in what function we are having. So after that, this is it. So in this way, we can actually define a function inside of another function. So now if I execute this, this is got executed. So if I wanted to call this outer function, I can directly call the outer function, right? So now if I call outer and if I execute this, so we are only getting outer function. So how the functionality, how the process happening is that when we call this outer function, this process is going here and we are only executing this print statement. So we are not, though this definition is executed, so we are not actually calling this inner function, right? Because of that reason, this inner does not execute it. So in order to execute this inner function, what we can do is that we can call this function from the outer function. So we can call this inner function from the outer function. That is what I am doing here. So when this execution comes to this outer function, this is got executed, this print got executed. After that, this definition is got executed. So when we call this inner function, this print statement will got executed. And if I execute this, and if I execute this one more time, we can able to see first we are getting outer function, after that we are getting inner function. So in this way, we can call this outer function. In this outer function, when we call this inner function, we can actually get this inner function. So this will be happening only through outer function only. This inner function execution only happen outer function. So we are calling the outer function calling inner function. So can we call the inner function directly without calling the outer function? So in order to do that, we need to go one more step. We need to do some modification in this function. So what that means is that I will take this same function here. So I will mention here. So now we need to, if you wanted to call this inner function, let's try that. Let's try that first. And let's say if I call this inner, and if this inner function is present, right? So if I call this inner function, if I execute this, so we are getting error. Name is a inner is not defined. So what by this you can able to understand we cannot directly call this inner function without calling the outer function. So in order to call this inner function, what we need to do is that we need to do some modification in this function, and what that modification is that we need to return this inner. So from this outer function, we need to return this inner function. Then only we can able to call this inner function. And still we cannot directly call this function. We cannot directly call this inner function. There is one more step that we need to do. So first we need to call this outer function. So when we call this outer function, what happens is that if I execute this, you can see we are getting outer and we are getting inner. So apart from that, if I print this result and if I execute this, you can able to see we are getting none here because I haven't executed this. If I execute this and if I execute this, now you can see the result. We are getting function local, so this outer, right? So this is the actual function name here. So this is of locals, and after that you can see we are having inner. So this inner is nothing but the return of this function, return of this outer function. So now what we can do is that in order to call this inner function, first what I will be doing is that I will assign the result of this outer function to a variable. Let's say in, so I am just mentioning ine, and if I execute this, we are only getting outer function because we are not calling this inner function from this outer function also. Because of that reason, this inner function is not executed. So we are storing this result of inner function in ine, right? So now what I will be doing is that I am just mentioning ine, and if I mention these braces and if I execute this, we are getting the inner function. So how we are getting the inner function? This will be only happening. This print statement only happen when we call this inner function, right? So, but still we are getting the result. We are getting the inner function by simply mentioning this ine. So what is happening is that inside of this outer function, we are returning the inner function. So when we call this outer function, the result of this inner function, the return of this inner function is stored in this ine. So after that, when we call this ine directly, this inner function is got invoked. This execution of this inner function is happening. That is the reason we are getting this inner function. So in this way, we can actually call the inner function from the outer function. So I hope you can able to understand that. So let us go ahead and see one more case. So one more important aspect when we are dealing with the nested functions, which is nothing but scope of a variable inside of a function. So in our previous videos, we have seen the scope of a variable globally and within the function. So in this video, we will be seeing the scope of a variable in the nested functions. So let us go ahead and understand the scope. So now what I will be doing is that, so I will take some more cells here. So some more cells. So to understand clearly, what I will be doing is that I will mention outer here. So inside of this outer, I will mention a number here. So let's say I am mentioning number 20 here. So instead of doing number 20 here, what I will be doing is that instead of before this function only, I will be mentioning number as 10 here. So after that, if I print this number in the outer function, so I will first mention outer. So after that, I will print number here. So after that, I will mention one more function in this outer function. I am mentioning inner one here. So I wanted to have two functions. So for that reason only, I am mentioning inner one. So in this inner one, what I will be doing is that I am mentioning inner one. So after that, I wanted to mention this number here. So after that, I wanted to consider one more function inside of this inner function. So this is a nested function. So this function is inner function for this outer function. So for this inner function, I wanted to consider one more inner function. So for that reason, I am mentioning inner 2, and inside of this inner 2, I will print inner 2, and after that, I will print this number here. So now if I execute this, this is got executed. So now if I call outer here and if I execute this, so we are getting only this outer because this inner one and inner two are not get called, right? So that is the reason we are not getting the result. So now what I can do is that from this inner one function, I will be calling inner two here. So after that, from this outer function, I will be calling inner function. So inner one function. So how it is happening is that this outer, whenever we call this outer, the function execution starts and we will be executing this function definition of inner one. So apart from that, we will be, this execution will go for inner two also. So from this inner one, so we will start with outer. So from this outer, we will be calling this inner one. So this inner one starts its execution. So this inner two definition will be executed. So after that, when we call this inner two, the actual execution of inner two will happen. So I hope you can able to understand based on the previous example that what we have seen about the nested functions, right? So now I will execute this. and I will execute this one as well. So now you can see the difference. We are getting the previously we are getting outer 10. So now we are getting inner 1 which is 10 and inner 2 also 10. So why we are getting all the values of number which is 10 is because this number is 10 is global, right? So when this number is global, all the modules, all the block of codes will have the access for this global variable. Let's say what I will be doing is that I will mention the same num here. So instead of mentioning 10, I will mention 20 here. And if I execute this, understand carefully and observe carefully. If I execute this and if I execute this one also, so this function got executed. So if I execute this call is need to be executed, right? If I execute this, so you can see the difference. All the tens are replaced with 20s. So previously we are getting all the tens, right? So now we are getting 20s. The reason is because this number is equal to 20 is overriding the previous number which is 10. That is the reason we are getting all the values as 20. So we are getting 20 to this outer function and for this inner one and inner two functions also. So now what I will be doing is that in this inner one function, so I will be mentioning number is equal to 30. So now I will execute this. Observe carefully. I will execute this one also. So now you can see the difference from outer function only. We are getting 20. For inner one and inner two, we are getting 30, 30. The reason is because this number one is overriding by using this number one here in the outer function. So after that, in this inner one function, we were overriding this number using this number again in the inner function. So now if I mention number is equal to 40, if I execute this and if I execute this, so you can see the difference. We are getting 20, 30 and 40. So the reason is because this global number is replaced with this outer function number. This outer function number is replaced with this inner function number, and this inner function number is replaced with this inner two. So inner two function. So I hope you can able to understand how we are getting 20 for this. The reason is because this 20 is only accessible for this number one only, because we were overriding this number with 30. That is the reason we are getting 30 in inner one. So after that, this 30 is overriding with this 40. That is the reason we are getting 40 here. So that's it for this understanding of scope. So this global variables are keeps overriding by this function. So let's say if I remove this number 4, number using this 40, and if I execute this, so if I execute this, so still we can able to see 30 and 30, because this 30 can be accessible for this number and for this number also. So that's it. That's how the scope works in the nested function. So to understand more clearly about the scope in functions, watch the previous videos about scope of functions, so that you can able to understand more clearly about the scope in functions, scope out of functions. So that's it for this video, and I hope you can able to understand nested functions and how nested functions works, and the scope of nested functions in the scope of nested functions. So thank you for watching this video. In the next video, we will be discussing some more important concepts regarding functions. So to stay updated with my latest videos, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notifications to all, so that whenever I upload any video, you will get the notification. So if you found this video interesting, hit the like button. So thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.